the future. You can reference these basics of Illustrator. So we take our bunny, open it up. Notice if I click the bunny, everything moves. That's because all these different shapes, which I'm going to show you now and break it apart, are grouped together. We looked at that a little bit last time, where you can take different objects and you can group them together. If I right-click on my bunny, I can go up to Ungroup, and I can ungroup it. So if I want to modify my bunny, I want to make it a saber cat bunny or whatever, which you could, I ungroup, and now I'm going to go ahead and zoom in. Control plus or Control minus is a good way to zoom in and out. There's multiple ways. If you know other Adobe programs, it's pretty similar. If I zoom into my cute little bunny, I've now ungrouped my bunny. Each section is now on its own. The body, the feet are separate. The ears are kind of grouped together still. I could ungroup the ears again, just they're grouped inside of groups. But I could change and modify, the shape of his face using just changing the directions, using the pen tool, and change the position of his nose or whatever, or change the eye. Or I could, let's go with the pen tool, and let's create this cool looking teeth. Put a tooth, make it say white, and show this cool looking saber-tooth kitty. If you click on something and hold Alt, it will actually copy it. So if you want to like duplicate something, duplicate a path, a piece of grass, a cloud, or whatever, you just click and hold Alt and drag it. You'll actually get a second one. I'm going to actually take my saber-tooth bunny. Doesn't he look ferocious? And I could modify my bunny. At this point, everything is still individualized. I didn't regroup it. But if I want, once I get the scary looking teeth in the way, that doesn't look quite right. Get them where they want. I can then reselect everything. To do that, I just click with one of the mouse tools, the black or the white mice. Click and drag, you'll get that box. Select everything. It's all selected. Now I can move it as a whole. It's still not grouped until I right-click again, and I can regroup it. At that point, it all becomes another group. It's grouped back together. So now I can move my bunny as a whole. So if you want to change the formation of the bunny, make his feet bigger or smaller, his ears bigger or smaller, different colors, you could ungroup it, click on a portion of his body, and give it a different fill color. So that becomes a different texture, a different shape on the bunny. So you're totally free to modify the bunny a little bit as you choose. You can create multiple bunnies. You can create a handful of bunnies in a very busy scene, destroying the garden or whatever you want to do for your scene. Questions so far? Now I want to break down this piece a little bit. This is obviously more complex. But what they did, they started with a rectangle for the board, and then they created some of these shapes for the wood texture. There's multiple pieces. Let me zoom in so you can see it a little bit better. There's the board, but there's also pieces. So each item was grouped. They have a grouping for the texture on the wood, which was inside the actual plank. So each plank was a group of 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 different pieces all grouped together. So they would move independently as a plank with looking textured. Notice as well, if you want to get into your piece, you might want to add some depth to the piece. See, the carrots are over top of the grass and the wood. We could, if we wanted, we could right-click and send them to the back by our arrangement. I can send it back. If you like shortcuts or some chords, wrong button there. I can send that to the back as well. Right-click, send it back. Control-Shift, bracket. And I can move things around in that particular order. So that's kind of the basics of what we want to look at. Now we're going to start to show you the basics of how we, grouping items, start to add elements to the piece. So typically, let's say you want to put them on a grassy knoll. He's on some type of grassy form. I'm going to go ahead and just create you could use a shape like a rectangle or oval. Remember, if you have a tool, if you click and hold, you'll get more tools inside of that tools. There's tools inside of tools because they couldn't fit all the tools on the toolbar. They gave you tools inside of tools, and almost every option, if you click and drag, you'll have more tools accessible to you. I'm going to use let's use the brush tool. And I'm going to go ahead and paint kind of a grassy knoll. Don't worry about going outside the lines. We can very easily, anything that goes into the gray non-artboard, we can very easily cut that out. So if you want to draw a shape that goes outside that board, I'll show you when we're done here, before we're done with today, how to cut out the excess over the edge of the artboard. It's a pretty simple process. We can do it at the end. So now I've drawn. Unfortunately, I drew it with a white color, so we can't really see it very well, but there's a white shape there. I'm going to go ahead and change that. Instead of being a stroke of white, I'm going to give it a stroke of probably green. Same thing, I'm going to give it a fill color, green. And now I have my beautiful grassy knoll. Doesn't that look nice on a 15 below zero day? So I have my grass put through. Then I could add something else. What else should I add? A flower, okay. Ooh. Let's do a flower. So probably do like a line. Let's do it not with green. Let's do it with kind of a darker green stem, maybe. Let's do a darker green. And I'm going to do it something like this. And create that stem, maybe create a couple of them flowers on there. Never design well when people are watching. Let's create some type of flower. What color flower? Someone else can what color flower should we make? What kind of flower or color flower? Not color flower, that's like stuff bunnies eat in the garden. No. Sorry, little bunny garden jokes. Rose? Kind of a dark rose color? Okay, let's do a rose color. And I can start to create my beautiful rose design. Which is gorgeous, of course. If you have like a laptop or you have it on, you have a tablet, you can actually like write and draw easier than with a mouse. It's a little more convoluted to do with a mouse. But start to draw, and you can see I'm not always great with a piece of mouse and digital art, but you start to create your flower. I can then select my flower. I have my three elements, the two roses and the one stem. Select it, and I'm going to go ahead and group it. I've got my grouped layer. My flower is independent of my grass. And I could then hold Alt and drag multiple of them. I don't know if bunnies like roses, but maybe this one does. And I can create my section. If I wanted to create like they did on your carrots, they actually created a triangle, cut off the one side, and put the lines to it. So we can create carrots if we wanted. Anything else we should add to our piece? We can go simple, we can go a little more complex. James, what do you think we should add? Good. Here we have two Jameses. They're looking in that direction. They all both respond. Go ahead. Stilly.
Give it a sun or some clouds.
Ooh, something simple. Something like some sun. A nice sunny day. That would be helpful right now, which we do have sun. It's just still a little chilly. So I go to my ellipse tool. I click my rectangle, drag out. Remember, I hold a certain key. It allows me to have a perfect circle. Remember what key I hold to have a perfect circle? Instead of kind of an oval or a football? Shift. Hold Shift. So Shift will make it proportionate. So if we want a perfect circle, hold Shift. And of course, fill it with yellow, because that's typically what we think of the sun. How do they know that? Because nobody can look at the sun. I don't know, but yes. Okay, so we have our sun. Let's move it off to the side, and let's create some. What do you want? Like sunset colors, like a straight up blue color sky. What kind of sky do we want? Sunset. Sunset. Okay. Yeah. So like a gradient, some like purples or oranges color, something a little more attractive than just straight up. It's true. It's true. They don't. They're all the predators are out there during the day.
Also, that sun is awfully low.
Artistic license is being challenged by a too rationalized person. So I'm going to go and create a rectangle probably, and I can create a pretty large rectangle. I don't have to worry about the grasses. I can put it in the background. So I'm just going to cover any area that's not grass. And let's go like that. Create my fill color. And by default, then, I have solid colors to choose from. There are a few here that are gradient colors. Now, that's a decent gradient. Once I choose a gradient, I have a gradient in my fill color. I can then go to my gradient options. And I can start to edit the colors, how they shift and rotate in the transition of one color to the other. So I'm going to go to my gradient colors, my options, and I'm going to change. It'll show me I have multiple options on here. Right now I have yellow and orange. I'm going to make it more of a purplish color. Purple, something like that. That's cool. Some different colors in there. Start to change in lighter tones. something like that. And then I can start to change how they blend. If I move the colors around, it changes how they blend and how the transition from one color to the other happens. Just double click the little, if I'm in the gradient, you just double click that option. Or if you're in the fill color, just double click it, and then you can change it right through the menu. So if you have either as a solid color, you double click that color, or if you click as your gradient, click the little yellow box, and then say, oh, let's change something different. Or I can hit delete. If I have it selected, if I don't want that color, or there's too many colors, I can click that color, throw it in the trash can, push the trash can, it'll go away. So I can start to change that color shifting. I think there's too many colors, so I'm going to change the colors a little bit there. The diamond just above changes how it progresses and changes which direction comes from which speed, how drastic that change happens. Right now I'm at a horizontal gradient and I want it to happen more of a vertical gradient. So I want to actually change the angle that it comes at. So I would change my angle to a 90-degree angle. So now it tops from top to bottom. I can change it in any direction I so choose. But 90-degree makes it now so it's from top to bottom or bottom to top, depending on how you read it. So my colors are starting to transition and change. Of course, right now, what's my problem? I can't see my bunny. How do I get the clouds or the sky so I can actually see my bunny? There's two different ways. Send the cloud to the back or bring the bunny to the front. Right now I can't see the bunny, so I can't grab the bunny and bring it to the front. So it's easier to send the sky to the back. Right click, arrange, send to back. Ah, now we're getting somewhere. Of course, if we have this kind of a sunset, the sun probably doesn't look that sharp and clear. So, artistic light, and it's too far low and high in the sky. I get that. So you change it around. Let me put it in the background, kind of blur it a little bit. How do I blur something? Ooh, yes, David. Effect, yes, effect. Go to effect. Stylize. No. Blowing edges won't quite what we do.
No, the one above that one.
Cool. Try that one. How about blur? He was in the right track. He was in the right field. So good job. We'll do a couple different ways. We'll do radial blur, Gaussian blur. I'm gonna try probably radial. Gaussian blur. It just softens the whole thing. And you can choose some of the other effects. And the more that effect goes, it creates kind of that soft, edgy feel, like the elements are hazing away and it's beautiful. Yes. Let's go about crazy. Well, not too much. That starts to look square-like. Now I have this kind of hazy sky. All the particles are being there. I could even change the opacity if I wanted to kind of blend a little more with the colors that are there to make it more of a mystical blending, more realistic blending. I could blur it. I could change my opacity. What is opacity for? Transparent. 100% opaque is completely solid. It's not see-through. 10% would mean only 10% of it's visible, 90% of it's invisible. So I can change my opacity to kind of get that blend. So I change, let's say somewhere in the middle, 56%. That's where I just kind of create you can see the sun there, but it's just getting dark and it's really getting faded as all the particles of the sky are doing some really cool things. I can give it a little warping if I don't want a perfectly round sun because it's getting broken up on all the particles. And now I'm starting to create quite a bit of interesting texture. Okay. Those are the basic elements. Creating a foreground, creating a background, creating shapes, grouping shapes. So you have your flowers, your carrots, or your roses, or your trees. If I want to add a tree, I can paint a tree, put that in the background. I'll throw you another step, but then we'll have some time to work and to apply this. Is I can start to add maybe more of those detail lines. Because right now it's just a green patch. There's no texture of grass. There's a couple ways we can do this. We can go ahead, we could actually take like a brush, and we can write like a slightly different color green, and we can make little stylized grass strokes and everything. That's one. It takes time, but that's cool. We could try that style. Create like a darker green, or a lighter green. I don't want to do it in that one though. Create a new brush, and start to create just these different strokes. A slightly different color. Of course, it's a fairly small grass. I want to create a really nice fine stroke. So I can start to draw grass strokes. So I change my stroke size to be a quarter point instead of a full point. I can create grass strokes. At some level, it's going to look kind of stupid. It's going to take forever for me to do nicely. So it's probably not my best way to do in a 5-minute illustration. But you could add texture that way. Some people will do it over top of the grass. What I might recommend if you want to do like grass strokes is put them off to the artboard for now. So create little grass strokes. I'll show you why in a second. So you just create a handful of these little batches. Then we will select them and group them, and then we can bring them in as a whole. So I'm basically creating strokes of grass. Texture. That's, if it's on top of the rest of it, it's hard to select it all because I'll select everything else. So just create these little strokes. Now I can come up with my mouse tool and select all of them, independent of everything else. Right click and group. Now I'm going to hold Alt. Every time I hold Alt, I'll get a new copy of them. So I can create multiple text. And it doesn't look perfect because I was kind of in a hurry. But you're starting to add. Oops, got the wrong layer. You can add some of that texture. And I could change, blur it a little bit. I could change the color a little bit, give it some opacity so it's not so sharp. And I can start to add some texture. And actually I have some of that texture. Actually, blurring it will probably help to make it look not too kindergarten-ish. I can say that about my own artwork. I could say that about yours, but I'll try not to.
What?
It looks kindergarten-ish. I can say that about my own artwork because it does look kindergarten-ish. So I'm going to go ahead and blur it a little bit. And I can change the opacity. I can even change the color to something different. Eventually, I'm going to have a little more textured look in there. And you can't really see it on the projector very well, I'm afraid. But you still can't see it. Thomas, can you have the lights for just a couple seconds here? I wonder if that'll help. But you can kind of see now I have some texture in the grass. So it's not just a plain grass stroke. That's an option. You can go ahead and hit the lights now. You can kind of see some of the texture there. Another option, instead of doing the textured strokes, which is kind of fun, you feel like really powerful because you're doing it all yourself. You're not cheating on computerized textures. Is you could find a picture of textured grass on, say, Unsplash or Pixels or some Google search too. That would be copyright violations. But you could find a picture where you have permission to use, and you can bring in a picture over top of there and have it kind of warp and meld over there as well. That's another option. So that's some of the process. Working with shapes, working with groups, putting things in the front, putting things in the back, blurring them a little bit, creating some texture, moving things around, adding, saber cat teeth to your bunny if you so choose. All kinds of fun stuff you can do. So you start to create that. Questions?